What is the worst thing you've done as a child that you absolutely deserved being punished for? As a child, first thing that comes to mind is that in 6th 8th grade we used to pay the classmate kid with Tourette TTE syndrome $5, $25 to have a freak out during school assemblies. During hair assemblies, in grade school, we'd all be in the school gymnasium and sitting cross-legged on the floor. Then, at some point during the important speech, David would jump up and start making his standard retard gurgles and noises and start screaming, frick frick, crap, giant S or whatever he came up with. Cheap entertainment. Yes, I am going to heck for these moments. I think it's really just another form of tolerance and inclusion. Kudos. On a day off from school, my friends and I got to making some prank phone calls. The challenge was to call random numbers, pretend we were cops and tell the person that their husband's son was arrested for picking up a H, or, if it was a man, to tell them that their wife daughter was arrested for being a H. So I get this one old guy on the line and tell him that it was the police calling. Before I could say anything else, he asked me if I was calling about the golf club. Being a quick thinker, I said yes and proceeded to hear him admit to stealing a golf club from a sports store because he needed a new one for an upcoming tournament. I convinced him to bring the golf club down to the station and turn himself in. 20 years later, I'm still curious to know what happened to that poor bastard. Good guy prankster, maybe you saved him from worse trouble by doing that. My brother asked me to pour him a glass of some Twister while he was watching TV. Instead I found some chicken broth that looked very similar. He threw up everywhere. When I was about 6 or 7 years old, I told my brother to smell my butt. He was only about 4 or 5, and my younger brother, so he did anything I told him to. I was bent over and right as he puts his nose up to my butt, I unleash what must have been a horrible fart onto his face. He proceeded to run to the bathroom to throw up for a couple of minutes. When I was in the 5th grade, we had a bomb scare in my school. The principal was unsure whether it was a prank notice or a genuine threat, so she decided to call the police anyway, just to be sure. To not cause any panic amongst the students, all of us were escorted to the auditorium where the children were encouraged to come onto the stage and sing, dance, etc. to entertain the others. None of the students knew about the threat, so we were watching the show in oblivion. It wasn't as entertaining as it was supposed to be, mainly because there were individual acts, that is, singing without background music, dancing without music, etc. So it was a drag to watch. I was called onto the stage to present my act, whatever it was, so I went up there and decided to spice things up a little bit. At the top of my voice, I screamed, "There is a murderer in the school and they are keeping us here thinking that we will be safe, but we are not." Needless to say, the crap hit the fan. Ultimate chaos ensued. People started running out of the auditorium, screaming for help, basically trashing the place. It took the school security staff along with the teachers a good 45 minutes to calm everyone down, after which I had a rather unpleasant talk with the principal and the district police chief, and then one with my parents. PFFF. 5th graders. Am I right? TL. DR. My school received a fake bomb threat. I set it off for real. To all those who find it incredulous that the students were gathered inside the school, not exactly. My school auditorium was located at a distance from my school, and that measure was taken to prevent us from going outside and causing panic in the neighborhood. I read the TL. DR. First and thought you had blown up your school. Pushed a kid off the monkey bars at recess. This was like 2nd grade. He was going too slow. GTFO'd when he started crying and went to the other side of school to play Foursquare as an alibi. The kid broke his arm, or something similar. I remember he needed a cast. Somehow no one saw me do it, despite being in the middle of a busy playground. Kid was so distracted by the pain he couldn't remember much. I got away with 0 punishment. Had panic attacks anytime that guy caught eye contact. I expected him to have flashbacks and reveal the truth every time. I don't even remember his name, but he moved away next year. Looking back, I wonder if the parents moved him to a safer school district. It appears I interpreted the question wrong. I read that as what did you deserve to be punished for, even though you weren't, huh? My brother was pushed off monkey bars in elementary school and broke his arm. We moved to a new house over the summer, so we switched schools. I was 10, maybe 11. At the time I lived in former Yugoslavia. Our Jewish community was pretty much destroyed by the World War II, so we took care of each other when they needed help. Some lost everything and everyone and were dying all by themselves quietly in tiny little, often very cold apartments. Long story short, I was helping one very old lady on her deathbed with brining supplies and medications, throwing some wood into the fire and such. One day she gave me an equivalent of $5 to go and get her some groceries. I did as she asked and brought it back to her, but I kept the change to myself for something stupid, like chocolate or whatever. Before leaving she asked me for the change, which she never did before. I lied and told her there was none. I could tell by the look in her eyes how disappointed in me she was. It's been almost 30 years ever since, and that look in her eyes is still haunting me at times. In a way I see it as being punished for what I did. So stupid of me. I tied my little sister to the outside washing line post and smeared jam on her face. It was a hot sunny day and I sat back and waited for all those bugs to come and land on that face. I'm ashamed. I was 10ish. She was 8. I think I may have got away with it until I was 16. I've been making it up to her ever since. There was a Roman torture where someone would be smeared with honey and tied into a boat and set adrift. Insects would burrow into their skin, and they would die of thirst in a puddle of bugs, honey, and their own waste. Sorry guys, I guess I don't remember as much of freshman history as I thought. Turns out it was actually Persian. I was 15 in mid-October 1996. My school's band was all set to travel to St. Louis for a competition, and my mother was not cooperating with me on signing the permission slip. She had no reason. She just did not want me to go. We had gotten into the car to go to the mall when I had a sudden flash of inspiration. Mom, if you don't sign that slip, I am going to act like a retard the whole time we are in the mall. Whatever. FNG Pete. From the moment I got out of the car, I emulated a guy I knew from school. I must have been pretty good at it, too. My mom received several sympathy glances. The best part is, we were standing in the middle of the moderately crowded mall when my mom had gotten her fill. She yelled, "Quit Ben retarded," and she slapped me. To my credit, I just blinked a couple of times and made a sound. Gaia. I also kept a straight face while everybody was staring daggers at the woman who apparently just slapped the crap out of her retarded son. I kept it up until we got home. She told my dad, who thought it was hilarious. Demoralized, my mother signed the permission slip. I deserved to be punished, but got rewarded, winning. That's awesome. Well played FNG Pete. I was a 7-year-old little girl at the time, a real goody good. I was pretend fighting with my dad, only I was using an actual bread knife for our pretend sword fight. I cut his hand. I spent 1 hour sitting in timeout in our basement, bawled my eyes out. Till this day it is beyond me why he didn't just tell me to put the knife down. I still feel bad about it. Also, the day I used my dad's old record player as a scratching device. You know, it looks so cool when DJs do it. His favorite record was on that record player. I severely damaged the record and broke the needle. I had to pay for the needle, but he couldn't find the record anywhere. I felt so bad. Years later I kept looking out for the record in stores and finally found it on eBay. When I gave it to him he said, "You didn't have to do that. I don't play records that often anymore." I made a wrong right, so I'm content. That one is on your dad. He was the adult in the situation. He failed to make the judgment call that maybe a bread knife might hurt him, and then he put you in timeout for his mistake. When I was in 7th grade my friend and I were bored and thought it would be fun to light some crap on fire. Great idea, right? So we grab a lighter and a pail of water and head into the woods next to her house. At first, we just lit a few leaves and sticks on fire and watched them fizzle out. We then decided to light a pile of leaves on fire. Bad idea. At this point in the year, in New England the ground was completely covered in dry leaves. The fire started growing into a large circle as we tried to stomp it out and poured the last of our water onto it. Nothing. It kept growing. My friend then grabs the bucket, runs to her pond, conveniently about 100 feet away, and starts relaying water to the fire, back and forth. At that point, we were crapping our pants not knowing what to do. I finally convince her we need to tell someone, but she's too scared to tell her parents. I run to the house and find her dad chilling in the garage. Too afraid to say anything, I just tug on his shirt and point to the nearby woods where smoke is billowing out above the trees. He exclaims a very wide-eyed WTF and then proceeds to call 911. Fast forward 10 minutes, 10 longest minutes of my life, and the fire department arrives and soon puts out the fire. It burned nearly an acre of land and was about 100 yards from reaching a nearby house. Oops. So I'm sure you're wondering what kind of trouble we got in. Well, needless to say I was never allowed back at that friend's house. The police department made us write apology letters to the house we nearly burnt down and the fire department. We then had to write an essay about fire safety and present it to the police chief, who my parents happened to be friends with. Quite embarrassing. Especially since we were like 12 or 13. Definitely old enough to know not to play with fire. TLDR. Accidentally burnt down an acre of woods in 7th grade. As a kid, my mother used to put M&Ms in a big plastic container. In an identical container was cereal. So after I came home from school, I think I was around 7 years old, I went to grab the container with the cereal and ended up knocking over the one with the M&Ms. I saw that my dog was eating all the pieces off the floor and I really didn't feel like cleaning it up, so I let him go nuts with it. At the time, I didn't know chocolate was like poison to dogs. Mind you, the dog must have eaten an entire bag of M&Ms. Not the small hand size ones they sell at the gas station, but the big butt one meant to feed an entire block of children. I didn't realize that something was wrong until my dog started vomiting and foaming at the mouth. When I start panicking and crying. I don't remember why, but I was all alone and unsupervised so I had no idea what to do. I picked up my half-conscious dog and put him in our barrow and just ran down the street looking for help. Being the idiot that I am, I got lost and couldn't find my way around. So, I just sat by the pavement holding my dog as he continued to foam at the mouth and slowly lost his breath. To this day, I can still hear him groaning in pain. TLDR. I killed my dog because I am a freaking imbecile. Honestly, I cannot remember what breed it was. I believe it was a terrier. I'll try to find pics when I get home. Also, if I recall correctly, I usually spent my afternoons with a neighborhood friend and her family because my father worked and my mother had to drive my sister around for violin lessons and whatnot. Korean family, so there was no shortage of stupid lessons for her. Some days I just went home by myself to make myself a PB&J sandwich and watch TV while waiting for the family. I really don't remember it being that big of a deal being alone at home for a couple of hours as a kid in the late 80s. My sister adored me when we were growing up. I was 6 years older than her. She was my permanent audience, and I was her permanent hero. When she was 4 and I was 10, she got one of those hair bead sets where you can string up some beads on a little wand, run a lock of hair through it, and pull all of the beads up onto the hair. Add a rubber stopper at the bottom and boom, instant string of dangling 90s. Anyway, she was incredibly excited by this and asked me to do it with her. I made a big show of having fun with it, and we did it as a little arts and crafts project together. She made one, which I helped her put in her hair, and I made one, which also went on. She couldn't read at this point, and some of the beads were little individual letters, so I used my knowledge of language against her and integrated the words butt face into the otherwise pretty string of beads. She was so excited, you guys. It was adorable. My mom saw it later when my sister proudly said, "Look what Teague did." Beaming and happy, my mom told her what I had done, and my sister was devastated. Ultimate betrayal. Crying, confused. It was seriously like when Sully roared near Boo and Boo thought Sully was roaring at her. That kind of thing. As of now, I feel terrible for this. She was so excited and proud and thought she looked so pretty. Ugh. It's okay, though, because a couple years later my sister somehow managed to lock me out in the snow in my underwear. Aside from that, I was not punished at all, but I deserved it. I deserved it hard. Epilogue. We're cool now. TLDR. Illiterate kid sister was excited about hair accessories. Dickhead brother feigned kindness and wrote mean things in her hair. Received no punishment. Hates self. When I was about 5 years old, my mom was in a physically abusive relationship with my stepfather. Let's call him Joseph. This transgression happened shortly after an episode where my mom locked me her and my grandmother in the apartment and barricaded the front door with a couch, and he was trying to kick in the door to hurt us. The police were called and my mom had to get a restraining order after. Flash forward to a couple months. I was seeing a child psychologist, as I understood now, asking my mom recently. My mom was in the room as well. The psychologist asked if Joseph ever did anything to me. He didn't do anything to me, but after that scary night and years of my mother's screams, something in me snapped. It was then I knowingly told a lie. I lied to both the psychologist and my mom and said that he touched me. I had an idea that it was bad in the way she described it to me, and I really wanted him to go away from us forever. He really hurt my mom and I wanted him to be hurt too. Child molestation charges were also charged against him in addition to battery charges. He is still in jail. I have never told anyone this before. Not even my mother or grandmother knows. I am 22 years old. Took the paper towel dispensers off of the walls and gym bathrooms. Stored them in the false ceiling. Those tile things you can pop up. I stayed after practice and would do it once the janitor was done. Just jimmy the door open with a knife. The school had no freaking clue what was going on, because it required tools to dismount, and wasn't like people wouldn't notice some kid carrying a towel dispenser around. I got found out because the ceiling tile got wet and 3 or 4 of the freaking things fell out, cracked the porcelain urinal. I never admitted to it. School got the cops involved, looked for prints and everything, recovered none. I wiped that crap. Some kid told the principal I always stayed late. They put 2 plus 2 together, assumed guilt, got in school suspension cause they couldn't prove anything. I freaking hated that school. I got suspended for having my eyes open during prayer. Think about that for a second. But surely someone else must have also had their eyes open during prayer in order to catch you with your eyes open. I made a girl quit school after 2 days in 4th grade. She was the new kid, so everyone was trying to make her feel welcomed. It wasn't working for anyone else, but I decided I'd give it a try. She was pretty much a complete B and tried to get in a physical fight with me on her first day out of nowhere. Second day comes and she starts throwing random insults at me. I heard something about her earlier and decided to retaliate based off of it. I waited for a yo mama joke and then it happened. It went something along the lines of my mom might be ugly, but at least she didn't run away from my family 2 days after I was born. Ever imagine how ugly of baby you had to be for that to happen? I was stuck in the guidance counselor's office for 3 hours. She got sent home. Never saw her again. When my dad came to pick me up, he yelled at me in front of the counselor, then high-fived me when we got into the car. I really don't care what anyone here believes. Although for clarity, realize that I mentioned that I did try to make friends with her first. The girl was a complete B. Nobody in my class could get along with her, and nobody wanted to talk to her past their hellos. As for how the insults started, we were lining up in the gym. Luckily, she was assigned the spot to my right. Out of nowhere, she starts attacking me for being Asian, random insults to my intelligence, random yo mama jokes, etc. Things that, as 4th graders, seemed like a big deal. I wasn't one to turn the other cheek back then. That was when it happened. As for my parents, I told them everything the night before at the dinner table. My parents know I don't start crap out of nowhere. They've trusted me enough since a really young age to do the right thing. I know that I may have gone a bit overboard, hence the screen name, but at the time, I just couldn't control myself. If I saw someone picking on someone else, I'd stand up for them too. So apparently answering a thread about the worst thing I've done as a child means I told a story about my life's proudest moment. Something I did over 15 years ago is not necessarily what defines who I am today. He yelled at me in front of the counselor, then high-fived me when we got into the car. Healthy. My friends and I were playing with some leftover fireworks in an open field in an undeveloped area of our subdivision when we were 13 or so. We ran out of fireworks, so started setting small fires in the grass and stomping them out. One of them got away from us, spread to the tree line, and boom, forest fire. We took off running and started banging on doors to get someone to call the fire department. It took us forever to get someone to answer, and perfectly formed leaves made completely of ash had begun floating down around us. It ended up wiping out several acres, and took several fire trucks and a helicopter to control, but they managed to stop it before it got to any of the nearby homes. Barely. However, while we were running around banging on doors, we saw German Shepherd struggling to get out of a pool. I assumed he fell in and didn't know where the stairs were, and he kept going under. We burst through the screen door and pulled him out of the water. We never got in trouble for the fire, luckily, because one of my idiot friends wanted to go take credit for reporting it. Later that night a local FD representative was on the news talking about how those who take credit for that sort of thing are usually the ones responsible for starting it in the first place, but I was paranoid for weeks. TLDR. Burned down several acres of forest, but saved a dog. For some reason the combination bad good deed just seems amusing to me. Glad you'll save the dog. I have a ton of them, but I still insist that I didn't deserve to be punished for them. Back in high school, some wannabe gangster from the suburbs threatened my friend's sister, so my crew and I made his life a living heck for years. We did all sorts of things to him. We subscribed him to about 400 magazines, checking the bill me later option when sending in the subscription card. Similarly, we signed him up for every single free promotion we could find. At one point, a friend overheard him talking about how the mailman had to drop off his mail and bags because his mailbox was overflowing. Gave his car a fresh paint job of used motor oil at least once every couple of months. Threw crates of rotten fruit at his house. Dropped off used tires in his front yard. Glued a corn cob to the trunk of his car. Found a box of old shoes and drive-by pelted him and his crew with them. Called his house at all hours of the night and got into screaming matches with his dad, telling him that his son owed us money. Mailed him a boxed corn cob with a custom printed dong in a box label very visible on the outside, and even a fake invoice saying Mr. Butthole, thank you for ordering big black dong. If you are unhappy with your purchase in any way, please let us know immediately. And the coup de grace. One night, I called 6 taxi companies, 3 pizza guys, 4 Chinese places, and a very irritated sounding plumber to his house. I told the plumber that there was crap backing up into my basement, and I needed him there now. Being 1 AM, he sounded like he was awoken from a dead sleep. I happily agreed to his $90 convenience fee for coming at that time of night. As a French speaker, coup de grace equals fat punch. Coup de grace equals a final blow. There had been a big ice storm in our city, and everything has at least a 1-inch coating of ice on it. Well, I was going to help my stepdad out. I thought, I am going to scrape his windshield to surprise him. So I tried, with a plastic ice scraper that immediately broke. So I went looking for another ice scraper, and proceeded to scrape the ice once I had one in hand. I got the windshield cleaned, but I was having fun, and saw there was a bunch on the hood too. So I was scraping the hood clean for him, and he runs out like WTF. I had been scraping his brand new RX-7 with a metal dustpan. Sure enough, when you blew all the snow off, I had scraped the paint to the metal in these jagged lines all across the hood. I saw murder in his eyes, and may have peed a little. To his benefit he simply went into the basement, where I heard stuff crashing and a blue streak of swearing for about 10 minutes. He finally comes out and tells me that he knows I was trying to be nice, gets into his car and heads to work. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.